What's up, guys? It's your boy GRC. Let's go! I'm pumped up. I don't even know what. Everyone in my life has been like calling me, texting me, lots of stuff, lots of problems. I don't know what they're doing. I can't think about it. All I can think about is moon gains and buy walls getting broken and truth and transparency getting shoved in people's faces at epic speeds. And I'm not saying like, oh, this is pumping forever, all this shit. Richard Hart, I mean, if people really do want to read between the lines a little bit, just like when Alex mentioned that HEDRON would likely dump off the top, but nobody listened because they were selectively listening at that time for what they wanted to hear. It happens the same when Richard Hart tells you Bitcoin's going to 11K and everyone forgets. And this is just my opinion real quick before we get into I'm not the galaxy brain here, okay? But I'm working on it. Okay. So, but seriously though, so these narratives, all this stuff, I want everyone to protect themselves to a degree. You know, GRC doesn't like to over leverage. It's just not who I am. It's not what I like. Maybe it's because I'm not experienced, but just you're allowed to participate without ruining your life if something doesn't work out perfectly. So remember that too as we go on. Like you don't have to put your whole life savings into Pulse Doge to make a point. You just don't have to do it. You can just be a normal person. Let the crazy guys do all the crazy stuff. Get involved if you're a new guy. Please learn what's going on. It's amazing. It's incredible. I don't have very much money, guys, but I have enough to have a good ass fucking time around here. I'll tell you what, just put $1,000 here, $300 here. I feel like a $300 DCA in Hex makes me feel like a billionaire for some reason when I put a nice 3-year stake out there. It makes me feel great inside. It makes me feel like I'm making the right decision. And in the same way it makes me feel when I'm interacting with the HEDRON protocol and dealing in the Telegram, talking to these guys, I get the same feelies, except there's more sell pressure on these feelies by the whales, which was by design. So it gives me extra feelies because now I feel like I have a bigger portion of the pie when everyone else felt like, oh, that pie just lasts forever. I was sitting there like, can you guys not do the math? Can you not? You're buying an inflating asset every single day and act like it's the most scarce asset in history. It's not how it works. This is about a product that works, that's immutable, decentralized, tagged to the B share with people behind it that are working. That's how it works. It's a whole thing. So I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm jacked up. I'm a noob. And we are ready to go, guys. It's your boy GRC every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. We have Alex in the green room. We're going top to bottom with it. If you don't know anything about what's going on, you just sit back and drink a coffee and watch this. You might need 11 to 14 watches on this in order to do it. But smash a like while you're at it, guys. If you're new, just understand we're streaming live on ICOSA and HEDRON all day, period. End of story. I don't even think I can do anything physically else. Like I just will have to be doing that because I'm so excited. It's going to be a good time, guys. Every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Let's go to the DeFi proof.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Here to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Here to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some Hex and I'm making a stake. Got me some HEDRON, I'm making it rain. Pay me some Maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way.
DeFi proof.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Here to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Here to take notes.
Yo, Alex. Good morning, sir. It's great to see you. This has been a long time coming. We've talked about you on the show many times behind your back when you weren't here, trying to get you on the show. So I'm looking forward to this. How are you today?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing freaking awesome. I heard a very interesting story in the green room, and I would like to learn a little bit more about this. where you knew or you had an idea that HEDRON was going to sell off, but in the back of your mind, you already had the idea of ICOSA to come out with this as one way of weeding out the whales who didn't believe or understand what was going on at the time when that launched. I don't know if that's 100% accurate in the story, but I was like, oh, wow, this is freaking awesome. This is hilarious. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if it's as crazy as it sounds, right? But you know, like one thing when you're launching something that's effectively an airdrop is you have to consider the side of like, okay, what are the whales who the people who get the most of this stuff? What are they going to do? And when you're making that call, you have to. It's like you've seen like a lot of projects do different things. Like Hex did, like, okay, we're gonna make these guys stake for minimum 1 year. You've got guys where they said, okay, we'll just like penalize whales. You can do all these things, or just make it a one-time deal. The one-time deal thing doesn't work for HEDRON because HEDRON's really designed to be this continuous benefiting thing to Hex. Like if you stake Hex, you'll get HEDRON. Maybe it's not a ton right now compared to like where the prices are, but you will earn it every single day, regardless of whether you mint it or not.
And we all know about accumulation over time in these industries. Like, I mean, a little goes a long way in 2 years. I'm just going to, you know.
Yeah, it's like if we do like some just like basic napkin math, right? Like if you made like a 1 T-share stake, right? And it served 1 day. Well, you get 1,000 HEDRON. That's not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things right now. But in 15 years, it's like 5 million something HEDRON, right? It does build up. We do have people with 10x's, so it seems a little off kilter, right? But that all balances out. But the real thing with this airdrop is if you're going to continually airdrop to people, and some of those people are going to be whales that don't believe in it, you really want them to be in like a disadvantaged position. So I more or less had the idea of ICOSA at the time of launching HEDRON, and the idea was that I just won't talk about it. We won't include it in HEDRON. It'll be a separate thing. And these whales who are like, oh, well, I don't really like this one pumpamental it has. I'm just going to dump all this on market. They're forever disadvantaged because they've effectively dumped 2 years of tokens without realizing it, right? And that's the only way I could come up with that allowed people to mint effectively continuously against their stakes, but also create a situation or the most possible fair situation for the little guy, because the little guy, the only way they get some of these tokens is if whales dump it so cheap that, you know, $100 buys a ton. And we got pretty close there. We got pretty close to 7 zeros. So
I think I did claim like a lot of backloaded 10x's. So I can't remember these numbers exactly, but I think I bought $50 of HEDRON 3 or 4 times. And I just wanted to have a piece of the pie. I wasn't thinking about anything other than I know all the whales sold, right? But like, I'm smart enough to just think about things in reality rather than the narrative that I play in my head over and over because of the things that I see. And I knew that somebody sitting down, taking time, learning about a process like we do in the Hex community, you would have thought about this, and that the coin has to be distributed somehow. And when Bitcoin started, how do you remember who got the first biggest load? They all have no Bitcoin anymore.
yeah.
None of them have Bitcoin anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like, all those guys sold 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza, right? You know?
Oh my.
Like, we all know that story.
What do you think? So going into this, when I first learned about HEDRON, I was like, oh, this is very interesting. This is cool, the things you can do. But then I was like, I don't see anybody. Why would anybody take 30 cents on a $500 stake or whatever it is, kind of thing? So were you already saw this? You're like, nobody's going to use this feature, or were you like, hey, the price over time, you would expect the price to accelerate where it maybe if you get 50 cents on the dollar or something, or 20 cents on the dollar, whatever it comes out to be, where you could pull on $1,000 stake or $10,000 stake, you could pull $2,000 or something like that. Where is that? You already saw this beforehand?
Well, like if ICOSA was never a thing, it would play out eventually because these whales are so concentrated. Well, we won't say whales, we'll say sharks, because the reality is no whales have sold almost all of them have just claimed. There's like one or two that minted and just hold it. It's all sharks that dump.
That's bullish.
Yeah. But there aren't that many whales in the first place. But anyway, these sharks, when they dump, right, they're dumping, I forget, that 2-year period was somewhere pretty close to 1 trillion tokens. And so they would dump that. Well, that 1 trillion tokens doesn't go to one person. It's like 100 people that eat up various bits and pieces of that stuff. So, it's like those are forever dumped. Those are forever, they're never buyable back when you get that diluted. And so eventually it would have just diluted to the point to where, price would appreciate, because like at 7 zeros, like I was saying, $1,000 effectively will buy a whale position. So if you have the price that low and you have all this stuff just distributed out, like, it kind of just will do what Bitcoin did when it was minting like stupid tokens, like 50 tokens every couple of seconds to people. So
this is also, can you, just for myself and hopefully some of the people who are watching, what is the kind of like the definition, or how are you defining a whale position? What does that mean exactly?
That would be someone right now who's got roughly 150 billion HEDRON or more.
It's a percentage, Sam. So I think it's an exact percentage.
It would be like 1% of the total supply.
Okay. Thank you. That's
real quick before we move on, Sam, gather your thoughts. This is explosive. I'm enjoying it. I'm freaking out. The emotions inside me are incredible. I don't know why, but guys, so I want to announce a couple things just for the sake of that buy wall just smashing with more force. We are doing right here. It's confirmed. We are going live on multiple channels. We got like 5 or 6 channels, guys, that we're all restreaming the same exact thing. ICOSA launch marathon, and we're going to have segments of each of the guys who really like these products coming on. And
what a great idea.
Yeah, so it's going to be like 6, and anyone that has a YouTube channel that has any, that's active on it, if you want to restream it with us and just like spread this love, just please, guys, we are good at this. Trust me. We know how to do this. I don't know how to do the shit Alex does. I know how to do this. Okay. I know how to get pumped up about something that's truly amazing, and I'm feeling good vibes. And Bullish has been in the background, absolutely crushing the freaking game like he does every single day, guys. So we are going 420. We got cryptographics, RH Max, Crypto Sloth. We have Crypto Kool-Aid's coming in there to give his piece. And we're doing this live. I'm dumping my streaming computer HSI that I set up for this. We're going to have a good time with it. And make sure you retweet this tweet for the show today. We're at 226 live viewers, guys. Make sure you smash the like. Everyone, I'm excited. Thank you so much. Let's continue with this beautiful.
Alex, more on a personal side, like what do you feel about the amount of support you're getting in the community? I mean, I love it. I think this is freaking amazing. But I know sometimes when somebody reaches out and some piece of content or something that I did, they're like, hey, I saw that thing and I started to take action and I changed my life. And you're going through and you're doing this, and GRC's like, hey, yeah, we got these 5 effing channels and we're all talking about Alex's stuff, right? And like, I'm sure that's really impactful. How is that like for you mentally, and just like to see the outpouring of support for what you're working on?
Because I don't know you for shit. Like I don't, to be honest.
I mean, it's nice, right? Like HEDRON launches, and there's some like initial like people are like, oh, that's cool, awesome, and then like maybe like a week later, everyone's like, oh, it's going to 0, right? Everyone hates it, but it's one of those things. Price goes up, and then people support you. Unfortunately, like, but no, I do like the. I mean, it's nice to have. It's a little bit of anxiety too, right? Because now you have all these people that are like, do it, do good things, make it happen. You're like, all right, I'll do it.
I'll drop all my hobbies and work all day long. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Now I know you continue. Like I'm just excited. I don't know. I get excited, and I don't know you, and I want everyone to know that too. Like me and Sam do not know Alex by any means. We have studied his work only. Like I have studied what he has put out there. I knew he existed, but I just looked at his YouTube content that he was on and stuff like this. But I have no affiliation with this guy, just like I have no affiliation with any of the other coins. And you never see me get excited about this because, frankly, most shit is dog shit that's tied to dog shit, that tied to dollars, right? This is tied to the B share. And that's what's always gotten me excited, is that interaction between the derivative nature of it with Hex, because I love Hex.
Yeah, and like
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was gonna say it's like, there's a lot of tokens out there that are ERC20s, right? Built on Ethereum or whatever chain, whatever EVM compatible chain. They're everywhere. One of the reasons I wrote HEDRON in the first place, and I never would have wrote it without Hex, right? Like to be clear, I knew you could write a smart contract. I knew you could write these tokens and all that stuff, but I had long term, like maybe for the past couple of years that I knew about it, just as like, oh, that's stupid because everyone's just writing the same whatever token. They all do the same thing, which is effectively nothing. And they're just like, and anyone can copy and paste this and do it, right? And
they're like, can somebody scream really loud on the internet for this? And then some rich dude's like, yeah, you know what? I've been bored for enough months in a row now. Here's 300 grand. Let's pump this shit. See if I can make another 900.
Yeah, and I was writing bots. Like I tell this story a lot, but I was writing bots on centralized exchanges to look for those like rich dudes pumping random shit, and it would try to just get in there right as it was happening. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Genius idea though for insight.
Yeah, yeah. It was this whole thing. It was all the TA stuff. It did like Ichimoku clouds and RSI, MACD, all that stuff is in like code, and then it would look for all the indicators to line up and be like, okay.
Did it work? Did it work well?
About half the time. Half the time didn't. So I didn't really make anything. But
I wanted to ask you about. So I was thinking about this morning. I was actually journaling. One of the things I was journaling about, just because I'm excited, I was like, fucking HEDRON, weird shit to journal about, but I was like, this is awesome. Because there wasn't really a big incentive to like hold HEDRON from first take, right? But this ICOSA gives holding HEDRON a big incentive because you can stake that shit now. Right? Yeah. Plus, if you just want to hold it, right? There's going to be a 90-day or period of time where there's not a giant increase in burning, and then it's going to be like a step change. But the effect I was just thinking about is how you and GRC were talking about the minting of the HEDRON from your T-shares, right? And it's effectively very trivial now, but because there's something that's going to effectively put a floor underneath HEDRON, or a floor that's like raising or something, depending on how you want to think about it over time, that's just going to make the T-share even more valuable, right? Like it reminds me of like when Maxi launched, and Maxi's trading 1-for-1 for Hex, and you're like, wait, they have HEDRON that they're getting at like a 4x or whatever it was with this Maxi contract. They have the bigger pays better, the longer pays better, and that's all wrapped into one, and it's still trading at 1-for-1, or at some points it was less than 1-for-1. I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
I made a killing off that shit, dude. I made a killing off that shit, no lie. And I sold my Maxi at 11 cents, self-proclaimed. I'm sorry, I did. And I could get completely nuked on that, by the way. Nuked. And I have a lot of USDC right now, and I could get fucking. People are DMing me telling to get rid of it. I don't care much about what people say. I got to read around a little bit more before I do anything crazy, but I'm not afraid to spend it. That's for sure. You know what I mean? So like at this point, having some of these assets are starting to outweigh because of the potential upside, the potential downside of me losing 50% on these other assets. So I like to read the book, how it's laid out. And when Richard says to me that all risk on assets are going to go down again, I believe him. And no one else wants to. They want to think if there's a pump, it's a moon runner and it's forever. But that doesn't mean the floor doesn't raise a fuck ton too. Like the floors for these really good projects sometimes stay up because they're really good projects. So that's something I wanted to highlight too. I forgot what I was saying.
Well, I mean, look at Hex, right? Like right now, Hex has been largely correlated for like the past couple months, right? But for the longest time, Hex was doing the opposite thing the rest of the market did. Market's going down, Hex is mooning, So, who knows what happens in the future, but I don't think it's impossible that it doesn't happen again, right? When I look at like Maxi and Hedron, I think of things like Maxi is like a perfect tokenized representation of the little guy, right? Like Maxi is the hopes and dreams of the little guy in Hex, more or less. All the small newer stakers put a little bit into Maxi. There's no real whales, like there's a couple, but they seem fairly benevolent. So, but all those little guys are in it, and that's why it trades at a premium, because all those guys saw the Hex go to 50-cent thing, and maybe some of them bought that go to 50-cent piece, and they want that to happen again. Like that's their like charts are just a collection of like human emotion, and the more emotion aligns, the more things happen. So, you have the side that like Maxi is like, no matter what, it's always worth more than one Hex just by its design, but that doesn't mean it can't ever trade at a discount, because at some point it could. But I think what
That
you're
would be
just saying
crazy,
is
though.
that would be crazy. Yes,
It would be insane.
that would be
Wait,
worth
what would
buying.
be crazy?
If Maxi trades at a discount ever.
Oh no, I and this is my take on that, and I want to call someone out too while we're at it. So as a noob, I'm still kind of a noob, but I mean, at some point, it's been like 2 years, and I study this shit all day. So I'm gonna stop calling myself that. But I like it, so it makes people hurt more when I beat them. But like, so Tangent came on this show, and I was fresh, baby. I didn't know if what I was saying was true, but I had read a lot. So I was pretty darn sure. Tangent,
you're really good at regurgitating things you read on the internet.
Pretty much. But Tangent was like, this is going to trade at a discount at some point. And I said, I don't think that's possible. I said, I don't think it's physically possible to trade at a discount when it's a 1-for-1 mint phase that has all these added benefits. And I told him, I said, it's more likely to hold at a 2x. In my opinion, I think this is directly going to hold at a 2x. I think there's a psychological barrier there too. But I said, I think this is going to stick to that part. And he said, you're out of your fucking mind. And I said, you are 10 years into this shit, and I think you're out of your mind. And we're stuck at a 2x, people. And that's all live, by the way. Tangent, I love you, by the way. But I'm going to call a spade here. Eh?
Alex, I wanted to that was a good call too. We were talking about it back in the day. With HEDRON price continuing to, it's been up obviously for the last 45 days or something, but assuming that ICOSA is successful as it goes through, like there's a shitload of excitement and that kind of thing. I'm thinking at some point in the future, if somebody has a $10,000 Hex stake and that is through an HSI, and the amount of advance against that, we'll say, is 40% of that, right? So they could pull $4,000 off of that. At some point, does that kind of like almost make ICOSA less relevant, so to speak? Because if the idea, right, is with ICOSA is to ramp up the advances on, if I'm understanding, please correct anything if you're like, hey, this is completely wrong, is to like ramp up the advances or that feature of HEDRON so that there can be more burning and et cetera, and all this other pieces associated with it. But it's at some point, if this is successful, then that is, maybe it just sits right below it, but at some point people can just take cash out without selling their stake, right? So then it's like, well, on the one hand, I have an HSI that's $10,000. I need liquidity. So when it's not very relevant to get a couple bucks on a $10,000 stake from HSI advance, versus I could go to the ICOSA and sell that, right, and then get that to turn into liquid. Versus at some point, if HEDRON's high enough, then I have, say, if it was for 40% of the dollar, right? So then I can pull $4,000, but then I get to keep my HSI to create the liquidity. So, you know what I mean? Does that create like a little bit, it's at some point potentially down the future, but ICOSA could still be there for people who want to get rid of it. I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm thinking out loud here, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, like the deal two things to think of first. The first one is that HSI buyback deal is going to continually get worse and worse, right? Because it factors in the hex share rate, and that only goes up. So right now, if you have, let's say you have a 1 T-share stake and it's worth like 240 ICOSAs, the rough number. It's 240 ICOSA right now. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it might be 100 ICOSA for the exact same stake, right? Like the amount it's willing to give out for these stakes will go down. This is the period of which it will pay out the most in all cases. The yield in ICOSA.
Go down. Wait, you said 240 roughly ish, and then on 100. Okay, gotcha.
Like right now, 1 T-share stake will get for 5555 will get you roughly 240 ICOSA. We don't know what it'll be in a couple years, but it will be less. And same thing with yield, right? Because yield is a factor of burnt HEDRON, but that also gets divided by the share rate. So, like all these things are gonna slowly and surely decrease as the share rate goes up, and the mintability of HEDRON also decreases at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to picture it that I can think of is like you have two polar opposite coins. You have ICOSA launch, zero supply, relatively hard to get. Then you have HEDRON, which is like, here's all the free coins you could ever want right now, right? And what they're going to do over time is just come closer together, right? This one's going to inflate, like ICOSA is going to inflate. It's going to get more coins over a couple years. It'll probably be somewhere in the millions of tokens is my guess. The HEDRON side, well, it's inflating a ton right now, but at some point, especially if its price comes in and people start borrowing, burning is going to go up as well. And then so it has this weird supply where like it's exponentially curved down. Like it's hard to picture, but you have this
the idea, if I'm understanding, I want to make sure I'm on the same page. So you have HEDRON's very inflationary right now. Mm-hmm. Assuming this goes through successfully, there's going to be a big increase in advances, which is going to increase the burning, and that's either going to drastically decrease the amount of inflation because the burning. It could actually be potentially deflationary.
It will get there inevitably at some point, because at some point you have this problem where the B share is gone, right? Like right now we're still in the age of T shares, kind of, right? It's like, I forget what it is. It's like $500 some to get a T share, I think.
And I think it's more than that. Oh, you mean 555, a 555 T-shirt?
Yeah, like a big, long one.
Okay,
yeah, that helps you out a little bit.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. But so like, if you think about it though, like the T-share is not obtainable for most small people, especially if you're doing a short one. So what you're in this situation now where like we're all talking T-shares, really we're in the age of B shares. Like that's kind of one of the things HEDRON brings people's attention. It's like, hey, like the people coming in here and putting $10 in, yeah, they're not getting T-shares no matter what. So that's going to continue to get worse and worse. And at some point, we'll be talking about M shares, right? Well, when that happens, HEDRON's going to be minting like 0.01 HEDRON per day on these stakes, right? So at that point, you have all these older stakes that are probably being borrowed against still or whatever. And if those get liquidated, they might still go for a couple million HEDRON when people can only mint 0.1 per day, which is net deflationary. So because like that 15 years of staking has to catch up with the minting. So I don't know when that happens, but it will go net deflationary at some point.
That's fascinating, right? Because you have the HEDRON that's going to be net deflationary, and the supply of ICOSA is going to gradually go up, but at a decreasing rate over time. And I don't know. This is fascinating. Putting all these different pieces together. Do you see that, like that point where the price of HEDRON is high enough? Do you see that people making the mental trade-off between, say, selling an HSI or borrowing against it in HEDRON? Do you see that kind of like being the trade-off people go through? Like it's like, hey, I broke my foot. I fucking you gotta do X, Y, and Z, and I need $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah, I think there'll be people making a trade-off. I mean, I think most people, if you have the option of completely getting rid of your stake or borrowing against it with some kind of fair terms, right? Like borrowing probably more attracted to that option. But there's going to be things for everyone in this case, right? Like if ICOSA moons, maybe they do, like, it's like 2 years from now, and then for some reason ICOSA just goes up 100x or something. Like maybe they do sell for ICOSA at that point because they're like, oh yeah, they went up so much, it's worth it. The difference is that there's always going to be a base demand for ICOSA where people are minting and they want to stake it. Like that's always going to exist. And ICOSA's systems will better make the borrowing side of HEDRON a little bit nicer. And the real goal of the two protocols entirely is to create all of this positive feedback loop arbitration stuff for Hex and drag, if they go up at all, they'll drag Hex with them. And we're seeing that right now with HEDRON to a degree on the Hex price. So that's cool.
Well, that just makes every single stake more valuable.
What it does is it just raises the floor of the whole ecosystem. It's just like a self. All it's doing is providing less selling pressure overall. Correct? Like over the whole ecosystem. Like if you're having it all as a whole, like anyone can sell one position or whatever. But if all these mechanics are working as intended, it can only be a net positive. If people are doing
well, like the arbitrage stuff I think is really interesting, right? Because let's say HEDRON moons, right? And it goes to the point to where you can borrow more USD value off a stake than it cost you to make the stake, right? Well, if that happens, what are people going to do? Well, they're going to make a stake, they're going to borrow HEDRON, they're going to take that borrowed HEDRON, they're going to buy Hex, they're going to make another stake, they're going to borrow HEDRON again. And every time they do this, they 2x the spread that they're making between the two. So if they're making $100, they do it again, they make $200. They do it again, they make $400. They're just going to keep doing this until they can't, until the price arbitrage equalizes. And what that means is Hex's price is going to go up, and HEDRON's price is going to come down a little until they equalize. And it ensures that HEDRON, if it is performing very, very well, and it goes beyond that arbitration point, like it's going to take Hex with it. Same thing happens with ICOSA with the HSI buyback, right? And I'd argue maybe the HSI buyback is even a little bit more direct, right? Because you can just make a stake and sell it for tokens, and then use those tokens to buy Hex.
Now right there, you got to get at the ICOSA price because that's the end. That's where the whole mental loop always ends at the ICOSA price, which is kind of intuitively.
Well, think of it this way, right? You just sold your Hex stake for ICOSA. Are you going to sell it for less than it cost you to make that Hex stake?
I don't know. I'm going to be so excited. Who the fuck knows?
I mean, if it's available for sale cheaper, like great, right? People can buy that token. But
do you see that? Like, because that's like the pin that's the price of ICOSA is going to determine the success of the system, in my opinion, to a great degree. Because if I got $1,000 stake and I get 20 cents on the dollar, if I need liquidity really bad, maybe I'll do that. But why not just turn it into an NFT and
can't you calculate it off the B share relatively?
Well, like think of this, right? Okay, so you make a Hex stake, cost you $100 to make it, right? You go sell it to ICOSA, and there's no liquidity pools for ICOSA. No one knows what the price is yet. So if you were going to make a liquidity pool and you were going to come out there and you were going to say, hey, I want to make this liquidity pool, where are you going to start? Are you going to ask for less than what it cost you to make the stake? Right? Probably not. Now, this won't hold true forever, right? Because people are earning yield, which is ICOSA. So eventually there's more ICOSA than just the people selling stakes. So there's going to be a balancing system. But for probably at least 30 days, all ICOSA that's liquid in the system is going to come from these HSI buybacks. And I don't see anyone wanting to sell their ICOSA for less, at least less than it cost them to make it. And they probably want to see a return. So they probably want to sell it for more than they make it. But if they sell it for more than it costs to make it, then it's arbitrage, which just incentivizes more people to make more.
Yes.
Real quick, Motley Investor has a question for Alex. Let's just highlight it because it's a good one. Alex, if I stake my ICOSA day one and I'm a shark, but day two, enough ICOSA has been minted to make me a dolphin, can I add ICOSA to that stake and change my staking length duration? So I
Yes.
think he's basically asking about that staking length duration change with how much you have.
Yeah.
I think
So like,
there's a bunch of questions around that too. So just highlight that whole thing
Please.
because there's
yeah,
been a lot
sure.
of talk.
So when there's zero supply and if you sell an HSI in the system, you're going to be a whale. Everyone's going to be a whale, right? They're all going to own more than 1% of a thing because there's so little of it. So when you do that and you stake, the system's going to tell you, okay, minimum stake length 360 days. You're going to get this 20% bonus. But over time, the amount there's going to be all this HEDRON or not HEDRON, all this ICOSA being minted, and you may not be a whale anymore, right? So if you're not a whale anymore, but you still have that minimum stake like the 360 days, but you're watching your bonus go down because the bonus gets calculated when you end the stake, and the time that you have to do it gets calculated when you start the stake. So one thing you can do is you can add a little bit of ICOSA or HEDRON, whichever stake it is, to your stake, and that will reset your minimum stake length. So if you're a whale and you get diluted down to like a dolphin, you can add like one ICOSA and then go from 360 days to 180 days of minimum stake length because you got diluted. You can also add a bunch of ICOSA and regain your whale status. So the add button is for both things really. Like if you got diluted and you just want to accept the dilution, you can add just a hair and it'll reset your time. If you want to regain your status as a whale or whatever you were, you could do that as well.
Can you talk about I don't know how to describe it, but I'm going to try to do my best here, where like the pre-minted or over the past piece and how that's going to be calculated over the next 360 days or something along those lines?
Yeah, so there's been roughly 3.4 trillion HEDRON burned since HEDRON's inception. And when ICOSA launches, the very first thing the contract does is it adds up all that HEDRON and then disperses it over 360 days. So that means there's roughly 41-ish thousand ICOSA going into the pools. So the ICOSA staking pool gets 41K, the HEDRON staking pool gets 41K, and the We're All the SA pool gets 41K. They're all getting that amount. They're going to be getting that every single day for the first 360 days. So
41K per day. Is that what you said?
Yes, globally into the pool.
Dispersed across per pool. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So like if there's 10 people in the pool, everyone would get let's say 10 equal people are in the pool, everyone would get like 4.1K.
Gotcha.
Right. So that it'll get divided down. But there's gonna be a good bit. Like that's like if everyone serves their stake, let's say everyone stakes and they all serve it to completion, and they all follow the rules, I think that's like 30 or 40 million ICOSA by the end of the first year. So I don't expect everyone to do that, right? Like I think there'll be people who emergency end stake, and some things get burned, things get redistributed. Some people won't end stake at all, right? Because you don't have to. You can let your stakes go forever. Like you could make an ICOSA stake, a HEDRON stake, or a We Are All the SA, and you could just go put your keys someplace safe and forget about crypto for 30 years and come back and they'd still be there. You could end them.
You don't have to pick a specific time length?
Nope. It tells you what your minimum is, and that is if you end within the minimum, there'll be a penalty, but there is no max time length. You can let it go forever.
So that's another huge point that I think a lot of people definitely don't know. I was just getting to that with Bullish this morning in our back and forth, because you have to get to certain topics as you go in your mind. And now I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, what is the game plan? If you plan on doing the minimum amount with no issue, what is the game plan for after that? And do you have to set that, or do you just wait? The time.
No, you just wait. Yeah, you just say how much you're going to stake. You don't define a time.
I got you.
Could somebody pull out? So say they're going to put in then stake. Can they pull if they pull out a portion of that? Is that possible to pull portion? And then
so I wanted that to be
reset?
a thing, right? We were talking about that when, like, once ICOSA, the idea was out. At the time, I was calling it HEDRON, was like a code word meme token. But the community, we're all discussing it and all this stuff, and we were talking about, okay, well, what about like auto compounding yield and stuff? And it gets really tricky when you do that, because it's great for like the guy who wants to go like super long term, but it sucks if you get a guy who just doesn't care about the money but wants to ruin the protocol, right? Because if you allow to use auto compounding yield of any kind, someone can just sit there and just continually do it. Whatever the penalty is doesn't matter, because like ideally the penalty would be more time, right? You just increase the minimum stake length every time they do it to like, you know,
30 days more,
30,
100
yeah,
days
you know,
more,
add
whatever.
another year or whatever, right? It just doubles or something. You can do that, but what if someone comes into the system and they just don't care? They're like, I don't care about the yield. I just want to ruin ICOSA, so that every single day they just compound, 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 and now they're getting 99% of the pool because they've compounded every single day forever, and their minimum stake length is 10,000 years. You know what I mean? And then they don't care, but they've ruined it for everybody else by doing that. So there have been things that were originally like cool ideas, like, oh yeah, we could do that we've walked through and like, okay, you know, what are the potential attack vectors of this, and had to cut some features from ICOSA over time just because.
So what would happen? So just so I want you to understand. So if somebody's like, say the three of us are all on a pool, and I'm earning $10 worth of HEDRON or ICOSA, and if I'm auto compounding, if there's a feature that allowed or was automatically auto compounding on a 24-hour basis or something,
Mhm.
what's the risk of that? What's the downfall if that's like programmatic?
It can't be programmatic, first of all, because you can't automate things on the blockchain. That's like the crux of Ethereum. So it has to be manual interaction. But like auto compounding can be like at its core, it is fundamentally broken on one side, just because the people who get in early always win. You basically solidify that fact no matter what. If you've got a guy who can come in and he can just exponentially compound yield forever, like he's going to be the winner forever if he never ends. So there has to be a penalty to doing that, right? Like there has to be some kind of like, okay, here's what's going to happen to you because you're compounding, which the only thing you really can do to people is because they're doing it to get more yield. So you can't penalize their yield. The only thing you can do is penalize their time. And the downside to that is if you get someone who just doesn't care and they just want to ruin the protocol, they can just compound forever.
Could it be done so say the three of us, right? We're
Mhm.
each earning 10 per day or whatever the case is, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to pay this fee, but by doing this to like make it better for the whole system, I have to add an additional time on. When I do that, you guys get auto compounded automatically.
I mean, you can, but then what about the new guy? Comes in a week later, and you guys have just exponentially compounded before he got here. Well, he's screwed. You know, you guys have already compounded like hundreds of ICOSA of interest, maybe thousands of ICOSA interest,
Can you
and
guys like
he's
zoom
lucky to get one.
moon brain a little bit? You guys are starting to moon brain, and you're passing
Yeah,
my moon brain
that's fine.
barriers. So is there like a point in there that is I just don't, I kind of lost.
I mean, the reality was that we cut out auto compounding because there's too many options for a bad actor to hurt everybody else doing it. So it's more fair if you have to completely end your stake and then restake if you want to compound than having some kind of yield compounding system. But we have we have like the next best thing, which is where if you have a stake and you want to like, oh man, I really wish I made this stake bigger, right? Maybe you got diluted, a bunch of other stakers came in, maybe who knows? There could be any reason. But you want your old stake to be bigger. Well, you can go buy some on market and you can click add. And it keeps your old stake points. Stake points are kind of like T-shares. Like imagine you had a 5555 from day one, and right now today you could just go add a little bit more hex to it. Doesn't affect your previous yield, right? Because like that's already done. But your yield going forward is now increased because the stake's bigger. So
Okay, so you will not, you can't draw any or claim any of the yield as a little portion, right? You couldn't take 10%. That's accurate, right?
yeah, you have to take 100% when you end it. But you can go buy a little bit on market or obtain it some other way and add it in. And now your older stake with the better rate is now a little bit bigger for doing that.
Oh, this is fascinating, Alex. I love this. What pool are you personally most excited about? And I know you can't say it's a fucking I like all of them or whatever, but which one are you like more excited about, or did you learn more about by going through the process of creating this, or like what do you?
So there's going to be some interesting things. I'm just going to like use testnet stuff for what people did, right? It's not entirely true because people will be complete degens on testnet. Like for example,
There's
like
trends.
We're All the SA got 80 million USDC on testnet, right? And I'm like, there's no way.
Hey, never say never, Alex, please.
Yeah, right. But I don't see that being realistic. So everyone's payouts and We're All the SA were not particularly like fantastic unless you put in like $1 million because everyone just turned all of their pulse sack, like the whole thing, into USDC. So it's like that was a thing. But when I look at the pools and like behaviors, right? HEDRON pool was most competitive. Everyone was putting HEDRON in the HEDRON pool. But the flip side of that was the ICOSA pool was fairly small because like you had to make the HSIs and all that stuff. And I think we expect that, right? Because it's really the only way to get in for the first 30 days. But the amount of emergency end staking we were seeing on the HEDRON pool, like 10 days in, right? So a couple days went by, they've got some ICOSA yield, they'll take it, right? They don't care about the HEDRON, burn it, get rid of it. So what was happening is the ICOSA pool was accumulating a ton of HEDRON from those emergency end stakes. That's one of the things that happens, right? Is when you emergency end stake a HEDRON stake, half of that HEDRON principal, well, it's burnt. The other half, it's just given to the ICOSA stakers. So the ICOSA stakers were accumulating a bunch of HEDRON. ICOSA was, increasing all over.
Question on that. So somebody's staking HEDRON, they're accumulating ICOSA.
Mm-hmm.
If they early end stake that, then they lose all of the HEDRON and just keep the ICOSA?
No, so they lose it's a linear scale. So let's assume your minimum stake days was 10 days, right? Let's just say it is 30, but let's just say it's 10. So you're in there, you're on day 1, right? So you've made your stake, you've waited a whole day, you got your first day of yield. You can end there, but you're going to lose 90% of your principal and your yield because you've only served 1 out of 10 days. So there's going to be like that's really just a percentage linear scale.
So at 5 days, you're going to lose 50% of your bag and 50% of your yield. At 9 days, you're going to lose 10% of your bag and 10% of your yield. Is that accurate? Okay, cool. That's fascinating. And
give me 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah, please take your time.
This has been awesome, and everybody here is awesome as well. Don't forget this afternoon, 4:20. 4:20. What an interesting time to be alive, right? But 4:20 p.m. EST, going live again.
I might have to smoke some herb because that's the magical time of the gods when you're supposed to smoke the herbs according to the Gospels. Real quick, Bullish, do you have anything for us?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna update because we're literally working everything behind the scenes. So at 4:20, we're gonna go live on multiple channels. The channels that are confirmed so far is obviously Jimrat Crypto, RH Max, Crypto Sloth, Crypto Graphics. We're gonna be having Crypto Kool-Aid on. We're gonna be having like all the usual guests. It's gonna start at 4:20. We have a playlist of a bunch of different clips that we compiled and set up so everyone can get caught up. At 5 p.m., RH Max takes over. At 6:30 p.m., Jimrat takes over. At 7, Crypto Graphics takes over, and at 7:45, Sloth takes over, and then we'll go into the launch and then continue a panel and roundtable after that. So it's gonna be exciting. So we'll be streaming for at least, who knows, 6, 7, 8 hours today.
Hey guys, I'm learning the potential power of these buy walls. And that's another thing I wanted to mention before we go, because it's just interesting to me, nonetheless, just the chart interaction with my mind. So and before we invite him back on, Silver the Antidote has been awoken from his deep slumbers or whatever. He was probably busy as fuck doing 100 different things. And he started tweeting very early about this buy wall. And, we're getting into liquidity providing here. So it's not first time I've seen the buy wall chart, but I was like, you know what, let me think about this a little bit while I look at the chart. So I'm looking at the two things in real time and I'm like, dude, where you start to learn about some of the real just number logic between these things. It's like all these people sold, they never bought back, and the price is right there again. And there's new people here now. So that all the numbers aside, it's like new people here. And then those people also get FOMO, super FOMO, and they make horrible decisions and then they buy back higher sometimes. So there's a little bit of a double loop, feedback loop because of the positive pressure. And I want to talk to Alex about that. And I want to do the amazing transition that bullish.
What an awesome transition. Alex, you were just getting into kind of I think a little bit what GRC was talking about, but you were saying the different pools and then what behavior you were watching play out on the testnet, where if you're staking HEDRON, right, there's a boatload of people doing that, right, because it's available, so you can do it, right, and there was not much in the second pool, and then you were talking about how they were splitting that up, and you started getting into that, and we broke.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone has HEDRON. So the first thing was HEDRON pool got a bunch of stuff thrown at it. The HEDRON pool was what you were saying was people were making it 10 days, 12 days in, and then they were emergency end staking to go get that little bit of ICOSA. They didn't care about the fee because at that point, they were getting maybe 30%, 40% of their yield. So they were taking that and they were putting that in the ICOSA pool because the ICOSA pool was paying out because there were less people there. It was just paying out proportionally way, way more. So the interesting part about the ICOSA pool was accumulating a lot of HEDRON from that emergency end stake procedure within the HEDRON staking side, because the principal, the HEDRON principal, 50% of it will get burnt, which increases the ICOSA payout. But then the other 50% just gets handed to the pool for ICOSA stakers. So yeah, that was a super interesting thing. HSI buybacks were a little bit of a thing. It was testnet, so a lot of people didn't show up to. You have to have hex, right? It's like there's some considerations for testnet, right? You probably need to have a pulse sacrifice, right, to be able to have money on the testnet. And yeah, you can go you can go get the free 10 pulse or whatever, but it's not a lot. So you needed to have that so you could get some hex, so you could stake it and make an HSI and then sell that to the contract and then stake that. So it was just a lot of work to do on testnet. So not a ton of people did that. But yeah, it's really, and then a bunch of people went in the WeAreAll essay, but I believe that was all largely because it was testnet.
Just to put it over there, because it's basically a gamified,
yeah,
piece of it. Is there one of those pools that you are personally more excited about?
I am most interested to see what happens in the ICOSA staking pool, and the reason is that is the indicator to watch, what people are doing. If that pool grows very quickly, maybe every day, just look at it and write down how many points are in the pool. And see how that changes over time, because that's an indicator, at least for the first 30 days, of how many HSIs and what their valuations are being put into this, right? That's a really good way to see that. And you want to watch it compare with the HEDRON pool too, right? Because the HEDRON pool will probably start out a really big number, but it may not always be a very big number. It may decrease and they may balance.
Really? You think that they might balance over time?
Yeah, I think the HEDRON pool will come down. I think a lot of people will FOMO into the pool, and I think a lot of them will emergency end stake for the ICOSA pool. And when they do that, the HEDRON pool will get a little bit better, a little bit more lucrative as far as yield goes. There's not a lot of excitement for WeAreAll the essay. There is if you're doing it, sure. There's the idea that after 14 days, no one else can come in here, and I'm just going to earn yield forever. No one can touch that. That's powerful, right? But it's going to be boring.
So why don't you pitch it real quick to some of the guys that are a little bit more, because it is also a little more nuanced. It's just because a lot of people message me and say, why doesn't Richard talk about Pulse X? And I say because no one understands Uniswap yet. So it's just useless word salad for him to be sitting. I mean, he could if he had a few hours, but let's be honest, he's out doing all that shit. So like, what do you say for like the people that are in here, even including me? I would love to more. I love long-term investing. I love beating people with waiting. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I want to know more about this and why I should maybe allocate a little bit. I'm always like try to stay not super leveraged in, but maybe into this product because Bullish is fucking excited about it.
Yeah. So we're all the SA. Like, remember like the Hex adoption amplifier, and like a lot of you guys are gonna be too new for that. But what that was is you had some ETH, and you could run some code of your choice. Like it was no like. This was before sacrifices were a thing and we had to wait for things. Like you would take some ETH and you would go to the Hex website and you would immediately turn it in. Well, you'd put it in and then the next day you'd click a button and you'd get some form of Hex. Like there was like a pool of like 500,000 Hex roughly. It might have been 500 million Hex. I think it was 500 million. And based on how much ETH you put in for that day was how much you got out, right? It was called the adoption amplifier. This is kind of the same idea. You have some token and you go in there, and we can use multiple tokens on ICOSA because we have Uniswap now. Back then Uniswap didn't exist, so it can actually just go check what the price is for things on Uniswap. So there's a couple of tokens in there, a couple of the community ones, and you come in there. If you put those in, you get an NFT, and that NFT has some points, stake points associated with it, just like an ICOSA stake or a HEDRON stake, and that NFT itself is gonna accumulate ICOSA. The catch is that if you ever redeem the yield, right? If you ever end the stake and get the yield, the NFT is destroyed. It's burnt. So there's only 14 days to make these. Like once day 15 happens, no one can make any more of these NFTs. They're gone. So what happens here?
I love limited time deals.
Yeah. Well, what's going to be super crazy here is because these are NFTs that are effectively going to be a stake. Right? Like you don't get the principal back, by the way, either. Like it's no expectations, but it's gone. So you're only going to get the yield, and there's only 14 days to make these things. Over time, at some point, someone's going to end one. Right? So what happens when you have a relatively, like, let's say there's only 10 people in and you're all equal, right? So you're getting 10% of the yield every day on your NFT. A year down the road, one guy ends he's like, okay, cool, this has got enough ICOSA in it, I want out. Well, now what are you getting? You're getting more yield, right? Because now there's only 9 people in the pool. No one else can join. At some point, this gets down to like one person left in the pool, and they're getting 100% of the yield until they end it, right? So there's a lot of people who have theories that like this is gonna, like everyone's gonna end them really fast. Like 2 or 3 years down the line, there won't be these anymore. They'll be gone. Because they'll have so much value in them. Maybe that's the case. Some people say they'll never be a last man because people will die before they end these things. So
what about people selling them? Have you talked about that? Because if it's
because that's like the coolest part in my eyes is because these are NFTs, right? It's like you may have this NFT that's accumulated X amount of dollars worth of yield. You can go to OpenSea and list it for sale, right? You don't have to end it. You don't have to get the yield out. So, and maybe you pay a premium, maybe you pay a discount. Who knows, right? Like you're just going to see what the market does with these things. But it's like the HSI just kind of on steroids because there's less of them. You can't just go make new ones.
Where is the yield coming from for the SA pool?
From inflation, like same thing as the rest. The amount of HEDRON burnt every day. It calculates the same calculation. Yeah. And
it's earning ICOSA exclusively.
Yes. ICOSA exclusively. The difference is, so every pool has its unique thing, right? The thing the We're All the SA pool gets is it gets copies of the bonuses. So like if you're in the ICOSA pool and you're a whale and you end your stake, you get a 20% bonus. Well, you get your 20%, but we're going to copy that 20%. We're going to give it to the We're All the SA guys too. The HEDRON stuff's the same. You get a bonus there. You're going to copy that. If you sell an HSI and it's a 5555, it gets that little 10%. That gets sent into the We're All the SA. We're All the SA just collects copies of all bonuses as they happen, as well as the normal yield.
So when you were talking about the test net, and the behavior that you're watching on there, and then giving it context that like, cool, this is what I see in the test net. Is this really going to be reality? Well, like people do dumb shit on test nets, right? But also the hurdle to even get into the test net, right? You first have this first segment of people who probably have to be aware of Pulse, or you know what I mean, in some fashion to be aware of it. And then once you're on there, then you can actually play around with it. And the behavior you had mentioned was a lot of people in that pool, right? A lot of people in the SA pool at that time.
Yeah, like
right?
I can actually like pull up some testnet stats.
So this is
still going.
The point or the idea that I was having behind this is that a lot of people that are probably pretty well informed, I have no idea like who these people are, but they probably have put a tiny bit of thought into their actions, hopefully, are interested in the SA pool, which if you're beginner, and I'm not trying to say anybody should do anything with their money, but if you're like a beginner and you try to like understand how people who have more information than you, like there's an asymmetry of information. Alex knows shit that I don't know, so that means he is more like there's an asymmetry. It's not symmetrical information that we have. And you look at this pool of people that is asymmetrical, they have different information, and they are choosing this behavior. I don't know, it's just a very interesting insight because when you put it into that context, that's how I like to think about things when you see people doing anything, having some type of behavior, taking action in some direction, you can play it out this way. It could be completely different than reality when it comes out, but fascinating to think about.
Yeah, there's like, I think the best part of ICOSA is it's kind of just like, it's a little bit of everything for everyone, right? Like some people really like, I guess unless you're like a super short-term staker, then maybe there's not a lot in ICOSA for you. So you have to be at least willing to commit to 30 days, right? It's like these 7-day hex stakers, maybe they won't see much in here, but it doesn't matter anyway. Those guys don't get a lot of HEDRON because they were never able to actually accumulate a ton of shares. So I think but the interesting thing for me is like, okay, if you're like super long-term minded, like maybe We're All the SA makes sense. You know, if you're just like, I just want to get some yield with my free coins, you know, because I care about Hex and I got my free HEDRON and I want to stake that and get yield on my free HEDRON, like yield on yield on yield. Like those guys will be really into the HEDRON pool. People who are really like into the speculative nature of things, those guys probably go heavily into the ICOSA pool through HSI buybacks and however else they're going to get it. Like you can kind of see the type of person in the chat. You can tell what they're excited about and roughly guess where they're going to go, because you know some people are just like, I just want to stake forever, I'm going We're All the SA, right? So it's like interesting to me that like you kind of have these 3 different archetypes of people in crypto space, and they all have their own little thing that's been tailored to them, but then those things all connect to each other and connect to HEDRON and connect to Hex and create a lot of like positive feedback loop potential.
I want to touch on one more question about like I want to hear your thoughts basically on this, right? Do you see that being like a probable future where HEDRON could get to the point where you do have that ARB we were talking about earlier? Like it's possible. I agree. It's 100% possible. It's just mentally right now, it seems like it's so extreme, but I know it's possible. But where do you see that like increasing the probability of HEDRON getting to the point where it's past the value of the HSI at some point? Does that seem like a high probability event in your mind? Because it just seems like it's so far away mentally for me, but obviously you have more information. You've thought about this more than I have.
I honestly don't know. Like it's going to come down to what people choose to do with the token. I think people doing HSI buybacks will, I believe those people are going to push the price to at least be on par, right? Like at least for the first 30 days, because that's where the majority of ICOSA is going to come from. I think those people will be demanding the price be roughly on par. Beyond that, I don't know what will happen. Beyond that, you're going to start to see some yield come into the system. You're going to start to see just a lot of the other dynamics all coming into play.
People are also learning that some of this downward pressure is a good opportunity, especially when we're so low in the market. Like me, Like there are a lot of guys like me that like, dude, if ICOSA dumps, like I'm gonna probably be stoked out. Like I'm just gonna be like, yeah, this is lit. Like I don't care about my HSI buyback. I'm here for fucking gains, baby. Like, you know, and I'm not saying that for me in particular with how much that I have, like I'm gonna put into the ICOSA pool because I want to. I'm just literally talking to you out of my brain. Like this is how my brain functions. I have my wealth settled to a degree, in my opinion, on certain platforms across the internet on different computers. I want to enjoy the process and all this stuff, and I trust what's going on. And I've learned from the dumps in Hex. I've learned from the dumps in Hedron. I've learned in the dumps from everything. That it's just, if the product is good, and I have felt like I like the product, I really most people want more money. I feel like, I don't know. Most people don't have that much is kind of where I'm at too. Like, I know that's where I don't understand. Like, how much do people really have? That's kind of where I lose it. Cause I just, you know, I don't know that much about it.
Yeah. You know, this is going to be a whole lot of learning for everyone because no one's really going to know what anyone else is going to do until we start to see where people start going. I did see Toby Wan asked a super chat. So,
yeah. Oh my God. Sorry. I missed that because I was in a dopamine trance. Hey, Alex. Number one, congrats. Quick question. So the NFT pays yield, but you get none of it unless and until you end the stake and destroy the NFT. Toby Wan Kenobi, thanks for everything you do, by the way, and I really enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, so that's correct. You're going to create that NFT, it'll get allocated some amount of points, which is based on whatever you minted the NFT with, and it'll accumulate yield, but you can't actually access the yield until you destroy the NFT. So you have the option of destroy NFT, get yield, or try to sell the yield to somebody else.
You just to go back to that, what we were talking about a second ago, you had said the HSI selling the HSIs to the contract. People are going to basically demand, you know, that it's probably, you know, at not a terribly gigantic discount. But you're referencing ICOSA price in that. Yes. So, but where do you think about the HEDRON being at the point where HEDRON could get past that value of the, from an advanced standpoint?
Oh, for right? Like for the borrowing arbitration stuff?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
I haven't checked in a while, but I believe that price, I should put this in the new app when it's out because I can just do the math.
You should.
You're the good.
But yeah, I'll add that to my list. But I believe it's around like 4 zeros and a 4 somewhere.
So does that work as in like, because obviously you have the hex price is going to play into there.
Yeah,
too,
like it depends on hex price.
And so around the 4-0 mark, so HEDRON around 4 zeros. And do you see that as like, assuming that you think about it as like a system, as things ramp up, whether the hex price is like where we're at in a bear market or whether it's pumping, do you see that eventually getting to the point where HEDRON is kind of on par, so to speak, with that from an advanced standpoint, where you could advance, you know, north of 50%, 60%, 70% against your stake? Is that something you think?
I think there will be times where it happens. Like, cause here's the interesting part, right? Because let's say HEDRON's value shoots up, right? You can borrow 50%. Even if you're on the HEDRON bearish side and you believe that the price of HEDRON is like not capable of maintaining any significant value. So let's say it does get there, you can make 50%, and you believe it's going to go down. Well, then borrow, because it's effectively a short, right?
Yes.
Because you can borrow at 50%, and then if the price goes down 10x, well, now it's cheaper to repay
back at 10% of the dollar.
God, yeah. We're going to have a lot of options. Ugh.
And then from the other direction, if it continues to climb up there,
yeah, you were wrong on your short, you know. Sucks to be you.
It's hard to be wrong in a system that doubles back on itself that's tied to an asset that's going up really fast compared to the rest of the market, in my opinion. And that's the other thing. It's like saying these are just like within our opportunities of having not really moving your wealth. You're kind of just making money, like, because there's always yield perpetually being earned. So to a degree, if you have enough economic mass, you really don't need to add that much more at certain times because it's such a new product. I don't know. I'm just thinking on top of my shit. But I wanted to ask, and Sam, if you have any other questions, just ask, of course. But like, if there's anything you'd like to pull up and show anyone, like that would, because there's 300 people in here. The chat's going berserk. My Twitter's going berserk. Telegram berserk. So is there anything you want to pop up and show before? Because there's going to be like 3 hours here where we're not talking about HEDRON and people are going to have to like mow their lawn or something. That's what I have to do. That's what I have to do.
It could be a long time to mow your lawn. But
it takes a fucking minute, brother.
He uses these clippers.
No, I use a fucking shit mower, guys. I'm fucking. Hey, your boy GRC's making it happen out here for the crew. I'm live every single day, by the way. I've never missed a day for everyone in the crowd. You remember that if you're new in here. Go on. I'm sorry.
well, like just think of it like, let's break it down simply, right? At the end of the day, you can stake some HEDRON and get ICOSA. You can stake ICOSA, you can get HEDRON and ICOSA in return. And where all the SA is like an interesting thing, maybe for long-term people. Like look at how the mechanics of that are going to work. You know, this on the surface, these features are not super complicated. Like how they all interconnect and how HEDRON relates and how it's going to do all this stuff with Hex. Like all that stuff's complicated. But how you actually interact with the stuff is pretty easy. So, you know, do just a little bit of digging in this next couple hours, and if you're interested in trying to see what you're going to do, and you know, try not to sweat it too much, because the reality is no one really knows what's going to happen here. Like a lot of this stuff is going to be defined upon user behavior and who goes in where. The best deals aren't going to be known for a little bit. So
and geopolitical, there is geopolitical factor in all of this stuff. And I'm not saying directly with your contract, but just like, you know, if they say World War III is coming tomorrow, people might be a little less apt to put their remaining USDC into HEDRON. Do you know what I'm? If you catch my drift, guys, that things happen, and these are speculative risk on assets. I don't care what anyone in this world says, because they will move that hard based on news of other people. We can't control everything, right? You can't control everything. You can control product market fit and having a product that will survive. And we know bull markets come. And when bull markets come, it's like all bets are fucking off. You know what I mean?
I mean, when bull markets come, things that shouldn't pump. So, you know, it's like everything goes up.
It's like keep your PLSD bags if you're ready for bull market time, because they'll be going up too. Everything will go up. It's going to be amazing. I want everyone to understand that if you're dumping the rest of your fucking money into these things in general and you have responsibilities, you're making a huge mistake. I'm telling you that if you have real responsibilities, like real people relying on you. I did not decide to have a little fella yet. So GRC does whatever he wants. Okay. But if I did, I promise you that my message and my game plan would be different, because kids are important, you know, and shit like that. I just want people to protect their stuff, because I know the factors that can happen. They could say World War III tomorrow, coronavirus 10.0.
Well, you know, and like let's not forget, like they did just shut down Tcash, right? You know, like things happen. It's going to be weird. You're going to see a lot of, I don't know, a lot of weird things, I think, in the nearest future. So hold on tight. Don't let your exposure be too big.
Barry Crump asks, has a economic audit been conducted?
So we've had Pulse Police do like code review, so their little code audit thing, but nothing economic. The nice thing about ICOSA is like we can borrow some things, right? So like ICOSA directly borrows the hex share rate, right? That's a number that we can already just agree goes up and to the right forever. So, and because that's already been audited, we can just trust that that's true. The staking mechanism economically of ICOSA is a bit different from like Hex's. Like Hex has to ensure that it has a consistent inflation rate forever, and then that's distributed and all that kind of stuff. ICOSA doesn't, because it's variable inflation rate. It's based entirely upon burnt HEDRON. So that makes the math like simpler in a lot of ways. Like if you compare like Hex staking to ICOSA staking, Hex staking is massively more complex code-wise. ICOSA staking, like the 3 pools all have their different like little quirks that make them interesting, but the actual staking logic is largely copy and paste between the 2. So,
and you can
Or the
also
3.
take a look at HEDRON, right? And HEDRON has been successful, right, so far.
So I
This
think
has
it's a
been
good
awesome.
place to close, guys. We have a lot of content coming up. Alex has a lot of work, I'm assuming, stuff to do, people to talk to, things to get situated, because, we want to make sure that I want to do everything I can do to make people understand this. That's kind of my part, right? Like everyone has a different part. And I think the most effective thing for me to do is make sure the most new people and people that want to make good financial decisions in a bloody bear market. And I want to just try to pay attention and read and be involved, because I promise you, you don't get good at this by picking and choosing what information you're listening to. And that's what most people end up doing. Motley's one of those guys that can carry around fat bags and keep an open mind. And that's what I really do love about him. He's willing to talk to Vince. He's willing to talk to his guys. He's willing to learn. And just because you have whatever amount of money in Hex doesn't mean you don't have to learn, especially when the founder of Hex mentions Alex by name, says he writes good code and that he's excited about the potentials of these things. And he doesn't say shit about anybody. Richard has never, I've been watching every word that motherfucker has said. He does not give people props. It slips out of his mouth just barely if he does. And that was a big trigger for me. I'm not going to lie. Just as an independent thinker, I was like, wow, Richard really just mentioned that and him. And he never does that. Maybe this is a good idea that people are just not caught on to 100% yet. But anyway, we could go on all day long. Alex, thank you so much. Sam, any closing words? Alex, any closing words?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, if you guys are watching the stream and you haven't done a big deep dive yet, head over to the Telegram, t.me/ICOSA crypto. You can look at all the stuff on my Twitter, at Synergy or at ICOSA crypto or at HEDRON crypto. They all go to the same place. But yeah, do some learning, go to Telegram, ask questions. We got a bunch of people, probably in the last 3 days, Telegram's shot up maybe 25% people. And they've all been learning, and they've all been just, helping each other out and learn stuff. So, and I'm in there too. So
that's awesome. I want to acknowledge you for everything that you've brought to the community. I think this is awesome. I really appreciate the time you took to come on here and just chat with us around this. I'm very excited to see how this plays out and understanding some of those little more nuances, right? Because the essence of the 3 different pools is pretty straightforward relative. I mean, for people in crypto, right? If I tried to explain this to my mom, it might be a different story, but for us, it's pretty straightforward. But the interesting thing here is the ICOSA HEDRON and then the HEDRON and Hex, and how the interplay right there is fascinating there. And I think that there's going to be some interesting learnings from this. But thank you, Alex. I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody in the chat here, and we'll see you guys later this afternoon. We're going to wrap up with some.
And if you're thinking about that HEDRON price really closely, instead of speculating, check that buy wall real quick and look at that.
Okay, real quick. I think we actually went down a little bit.
Yeah, Hex did too. Everything kind of took a little setback for a second, but that buy wall yesterday was fully loaded, locked by the gods, and today it is flimsy, like a little stick tent. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh! So be careful, guys, because price discovery is inches away. But I'm not saying that it couldn't just be mega downward pressure either. Again, this is just all speculative. Never over leverage yourself. Please be careful. Just be careful, guys. Just be careful, guys. Okay, everybody have a great day. DeFi Proof, the greatest DeFi rapper in history, guys. I'm going to give him a little shout out while we get out of here, guys. 420, we'll be back. Everyone smash the like. Everyone hit all the buttons. I'm ready to go, baby. Damn it.
Young folks, you tripping on them motherfucker.
Richard Heart. Richard Heart.
Bought my Hex from the fucking start. 1.1 every day we murk. By my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. By my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the hex, he is mooning. Looking at why they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. Pull chains out, now get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex I been eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. By my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. By my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my